All right, let's jump right in. What if I told you that every single mistake your organization makes isn't actually a problem? What if it's a strategic asset in disguise? Well, today we're going to explore a framework that does exactly that. It's this incredible concept called error alchemy, and it's all about turning those frustrating breakdowns into the actual blueprints for your next big innovation. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This single idea, it's the core of everything we're talking about today. It's saying that for the best, most resilient teams out there, the goal isn't to, never make mistakes. No, the goal is to actively turn them into intelligence. It's a huge, radical shift from how most of us were probably taught to think about our work, right? So, okay, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you actually do that? How do you turn a total breakdown into a workable blueprint systematically? It really is a shift from burying our failures to instead mining them for those breakthrough insights. So let's get into the mechanics of how this whole thing actually works. Okay, first things first. To really get this new way of thinking, we kind of have to be honest about the old way, the system that, let's face it, most of us are still working in. This is what we'll call the old playbook, where mistakes are just, well, they're just liabilities, period. You know this world, right? It's the world of red ink on a report, getting dinged on your performance review for an error, projects getting shut down in shame. In this world, a mistake is the end of the line. It's just a costly problem that you're supposed to hide. But here's the real issue. When you do that, you're literally burying the most valuable data your organization could possibly get. Okay, so now let's flip that on its head and look at the new playbook. This is where we completely stop treating mistakes like they're a problem and start seeing them for what they are, a new kind of asset. This is the heart of error alchemy. And look, this isn't just some fancy, cool-sounding term. Error alchemy is a real, systematic process. It's about taking all that chaos, all that confusion, all that raw data that comes from the failure, and deliberately, intentionally transforming it into something structured, valuable, and something that actually points you forward. This right here, this is the whole mindset shift in one image. That crumpled up piece of paper, that's not an ending. It's a first draft. It's a prototype of a solution that's literally screaming at you, showing you exactly where the weak spots are. See, a mistake isn't a dead end. It's a giant flashing arrow telling you where to look next. So what this does is it completely reframes mistakes. They become a kind of creative currency. Think about it. They hold these early signals, this raw data about things the system can't even put into words yet. They become the actual raw material you build with. In this new way of doing things, you don't just fail forward. No, you actively mine that failure for every single drop of insight you can get. Okay, so the theory sounds amazing, right? But I know what you're thinking. How do I actually do this? Well, the framework gives us two really powerful tools to make it happen. Or, as the source material cleverly calls them, two spells for builders. These are the two key moves. First, there's visual thinking, which is all about making the problem clear as day. And second, there's spell design, which is how you actually build the solution. Let's break them both down. So you know that feeling when something's just off? A process is clunky, a team isn't on the same page. The problem feels kind of abstract and confusing, right? Visual thinking is the tool you use to reach into that fog of confusion, grab it, and make it tangible. You give it a shape that everyone can see and point to. It anchors the whole conversation in reality. And the process here is all about clarifying things step by step. You start with that vague feeling of, something's not working here. Then you dig in and find the hidden pattern inside that mess. Once you see the pattern, you can map it out. And just like that, you have a schematic for a better system. You've literally turned a mess into a map. So once you've got that map, it's time for the second spell, spell design. And listen, this part is absolutely crucial. We are not talking about design in the sense of just making things look pretty. Nope. We're talking about design as the behavioral engine. The way you design a system literally engineers how people behave inside of it. It's your intention given a physical form. And here's a great way to think about it. Your first shot at a solution, your prototype, that's basically the spell in its roughest form. The core idea is there, but it's not quite polished yet. Then, as you learn from that prototype, especially from the mistakes it shows you, you create a blueprint. Now the spell's getting more precise, more powerful. The instructions are way clearer. The parts are all defined. And finally, that finished product or program, well, that's the spell made real. It's the fully manifested result of that original idea, but it's been shaped and perfected by all the intelligence you gathered from those early mistakes. So, what happens when you put these two spells together? When you combine visual thinking with spell design? Well, you create this incredibly powerful effect on your entire team. You literally start to engineer collective flow. And the difference it makes is just night and day. On one side, you've got this state of freeze. That's where everyone is working off their own assumptions, there's a ton of guesswork, and it leads to total paralysis. But on the other side, you get flow. And that happens when a shared visual blueprint creates real alignment and everyone starts moving together. And you can see the full impact right here. A team that's just guessing, they're stuck in freeze. But when you introduce a shared blueprint, you get flow. But here's where it gets really cool. When that group is truly, deeply aligned around the design, they don't just flow, they fly. Execution starts to feel almost effortless. And that's the key, you know? This isn't about top-down management or forcing people to execute. It's about designing a system, this circle of cohesion, where a bunch of individuals just naturally transform into a generative team that builds its own momentum. All right, let's bring this all together with a really clear takeaway for you. How can you find that hidden blueprint that's buried inside your team's biggest challenges right now? Look, if you only remember one thing from all of this, let it be this simple formula. Visibility drives alignment. And alignment, that drives execution. The entire engine runs on making things visible. When you can see the invisible patterns, you create alignment. And that alignment is the rocket fuel for speed. So here it is, your final takeaway and your very first step. Go look for the guesswork in your organization. Find the confusion, the friction, all those places where your team just seems stuck. That spot right there, that's not a liability. That is a giant neon sign, pointing you directly to where your next innovation blueprint is just waiting for you to draw it.